Hello, everybody, and welcome to Getaway Day, episode 17. I'm Gautam, joined by Mason. Today, we are going to be talking about some rebuilding teams the Giants, the Pirates, and the Tigers, all in various stages of their rebuilds. Just see how they're doing. And before we get started on that, a lot has happened in baseball this past week. We have a new team in MLB, the Cleveland Guardians.
Dude, I'm
Um,
I'm so glad that the Cleveland I will not say their names are finally gonna be gone.
yeah, that's the main point to take away from this for sure.
Dude, I'll be brief on this, but I find it ridiculous that they said they were gonna change it prior to 2021 because it was offensive, and then they came out and said, well, we're not ready, so we're just gonna keep using what we have deemed ourselves to be offensive. And they did that so they didn't have to go and do like a Cleveland baseball team, which really isn't the end of the world. They already wore jerseys that just said Cleveland, so it's not really that big a deal. But they finally have a name, so they can finally rebrand. If you guys want to see their logos or the reveal video, go to our Facebook or Twitter. I have shared both of them there. The reveal video was awesome. Tom Hanks did the voiceover. It it better win a Grammy or an Emmy or
Yes.
whatever that would receive. But
In other good news, the uh, the Eloy Jimenez has returned to the
woo!
White Sox, making a season debut today after he tore his pectoral muscle in spring training. So that's going to be a huge boost for the White Sox.
And if you're a White Sox fan and that's not enough for you, Luis Robert started his rehab assignment today as well. So
Yep.
he'll be back
So
hopefully in the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
yeah,
And that's going to be a huge plus for that team. TLR has already said Andrew Vaughn is sticking around. He's going to be playing pretty much every day between DH and left field. So it looks like him and Eloy might be doing a little platoon situation there as far as who's playing in the field and who's DHing. But it should be great for that White Sox team. So
yep. Really looking forward to seeing how he does. Hopefully, he's not slowed down and he's the guy that he was last year for the White Sox this year. Um, And then also this week is the week of the trade deadline on Friday. So rumors are flying. We saw the Brewers are looking to add a major bat like a Josh Donaldson or a Trevor Story, which is pretty much the biggest need for that team. Just getting a big bat in the lineup to support the amazing pitching and get the game to Josh Hader in the ninth.
yeah. So the last thing that we've got here today is I have to have my Cardinals thing in this week in baseball, right? Like I can't not. I have this sign to Busch Stadium right behind me now too, so like I can't skip the Cardinals. Uh, so the Cardinals are finally having one of their young-ish outfielders breaking out and being what we thought he could be. Granted, could just be a flash in the pan. We don't know. But Harrison Bader in the month of July, he came off the IL on July 1st. And I'll give you his season stats first because they're pretty impressive on their own. So he's got 159 plate appearances over 41 games, 8 home runs, a 289, 358, 507 slash line with a 129 WRC plus and 1.6 WAR. If you know anything about Harrison Bader, that is insane numbers for him. He's got like a 16% K percentage, which is usually 30. So he's cut his strikeouts in half. His walks have doubled this year. He's hitting for contact more often. I think we were talking before the podcast. It's his lowest exit velocity ever, but it's also his best hitting season ever. And he still has 8 home runs. So he's just not trying to swing for the fences every time. But in the month of July, his stat line is even better. 19 games, 69 plate appearances. His slash line is 362, 421, 609 for a 1.03 OPS. 8% K percent, or 8% walk percentage, 17% K percentage, 4 home runs in July, 5 doubles for 180 WRC plus. And Harrison Bader sucks in July. So if you go look up his stats, just his monthly splits every year, and you look at this year versus any other, it's insane. Like, I think his average in July is usually somewhere around 100, and this year is 362. So we'll take it. Yeah, and defensively, he's also on a Gold Glove path. In only playing about half the games that have been played so far, he is 8th in out of all center fielders in the majors in outs above average with 4. He has 4 DRS. So he's 4th in NL and outs above average in DRS. So if he stays healthy this year and stays on that track, Harrison Bader will have a Gold Glove at the end of this year. And he will get a vote for the Silver Slugger. One
yeah,
vote.
And you said like we might finally be seeing a Cardinals outfielder breaking out, but it seems like all their outfielders are actually breaking out in Tyler O'Neill and Dylan Carlson. So all 3 of the outfielders homered in yesterday's game. So
yeah, so
pretty good day for Cardinals fans.
O'Neill has been showing his power this entire season. He's up to 17 home runs now after yesterday. Dylan Carlson, since the All-Star break, if you exclude the very first game because he went 0 for 5, he's hitting like 245, which isn't great, but with 8 extra base hits. He only has 9 hits, and 8 of them are for extra bases, 3 of them for home runs since the All-Star break. So the Cardinals outfield, in all of them defensively, have made stellar highlight reel plays. So this is looking like we're finally turning the corner with the Cardinals outfield for the first time since 2019, really, whenever O'Neill and Bader both came up. So
yeah, and then one other note, I was looking at these standings today, and the Seattle Mariners of all teams are only 1.5 games behind the second wild card spot, Oakland. So
yes,
that's the Cinderella team to watch this year. Hope they keep it going. There's a lot of reasons to say that they won't keep it going, but it's a fun team to root for, I think. We've talked about them all quite a bit.
They're considering buying this week.
You know, Jerry Dipoto wants to do it.
Oh, I know he does. And this is the first opportunity he's really had to do it. So I expect him to make a move.
He's been so patient with his rebuild, and I don't think that he necessarily would have thought his team would be in contention at this point in this season. But now that they are, then maybe they do it.
Dude, what is it? 3 months ago, we were talking about Kyle Seager getting traded before the deadline. And hell, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Kyle Seager getting traded at the deadline. And now we're talking about the Mariners buying.
Absurd, yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. The very last thing here. The Cleveland Indians made a move today. And I have a statement that I have been asked to read. So today the Cleveland Indians have claimed Alex Young from the Arizona Diamondbacks, 27-year-old left-handed pitcher. I have been asked by none other than Matthew to mention that it's disappointing how I could predict the Indians doing this. They should hire me as the GM so I can make the right moves. I'm an expert trader in MLB The Show franchise mode. So that was the official statement from Matthew. He saw Alex Young to the Indians, I believe, all the way back in you guys' AL trade deadline preview.
I honestly don't remember that, but I believe it. He knows his squad there.
So Matthew was right. Would like to just put that here first. So,
good job, Matthew.
Congrats, Matthew.
Okay, and then before we get into the main topic today, I just wanted to ask you a quick trivia question. This question, if you get it too fast, I do have follow-up questions to it. So
okay,
here we go. The question is, which team in the major leagues this year has the most home runs?
Which team in the major leagues this year has the most home runs? So it's not going to be the Yankees. It's not going to be the Twins, which are the two teams that recently have been going off with home runs, and this year they both kind of suck.
Yeah.
I feel like the Astros are pretty up there.
Astros are 8th.
Okay.
So not a bad guess.
The Angels have got to be up there just because of Jared
They're
Walsh and 6th. Okay. Let's see.
I'll give you one more guess, and then I'll reveal the answer.
One more guess. All right. Is it an obvious team?
Nope.
Okay, I have one I'm going to keep in my head, and then out loud I'm going to say the Toronto Blue Jays?
That's a really good guess. They're second. 149 home runs this year. The number one team in home runs for 2021.
If it's the Cincinnati
San
Reds.
Francisco Giants.
Oh.
San Francisco Giants with 151 home runs.
I would not have guessed
the reason
that.
I bring this up is that's exactly why I brought it up. So I'm going to tell a story. It's a true story about what happened in a game last week. The Giants were playing the Dodgers. The Dodgers were up 3-1 going into the 9th inning. And here's the sequence with Kenley Jansen on the mound. Mike Yastrzemski strikes out, so 1 out. Wilmer Flores hits a little bloop single. Alex Dickerson strikes out. Donovan Solano hits a double to dead center field. So they got runners on second and third. Still a 3-1 ball game. Jason Vossler walks to load the bases. Then Tyro Estrada hits a single to the shortstop, Chris Taylor, who throws the ball to second base. It's initially called an out. The Giants challenge, and on review, they overturn the call, which extends the game. So then it's 3-2. The next batter is Darren Ruff, and he has a full count, and he ends up walking on a pitch that he totally swung at. It was not a check swing in the slightest. Dave Roberts comes out of the dugout. He's completely lost his mind. Max Muncy's like going crazy in the dugout. But this game is tied. And then the very next pitch, after Roberts leaves the field and he's been ejected and everything, Lamont Wade Jr. comes up and he hits a line drive single to score 2 runs. Bottom of the 9th inning comes around and Jake McGee closes the game off, no problem. So really improbable win. And the key point of it that I'm trying to make here is that the names that I just mentioned that came up to bat for the Giants, probably no casual fan even knows most of the players that I named. So I named Yastrzemski, Flores, Dickerson, Solano, Vossler, Estrada, and Ruff, and Lamont Wade Jr.
So,
how many of those guys does a casual fan know?
I mean,
maybe
I
one.
could tell you.
Yastrzemski, and that's only because of his grandfather.
I think a lot of people know Alex Dickerson. Yeah, I think those might be the only two. Like, I don't even know Vossler. No idea who Vossler is.
Yeah.
Everyone else I know, but I think we probably expect me to know most of them. So, yeah, no, that's insane. Who's leading the team in home runs? That's what I'm curious about, because it's got to be
that was my
follow-up.
That was my follow-up question, actually. So, the leader in home runs for the Giants is Brandon Crawford. Okay. He's having an awesome season. He has 18 home runs. It's I think that's the most home runs he's ever hit in a season. He's hitting 286, 363 OBP, 546 slugging for a 142 WRC plus. Other home run guys on their team, they're just getting a a really solid contribution from so many different players. So Yastrzemski has 16, Posey has 13, Lamont Wade has 12, Wilmer Flores has 12, Brandon Belt has 11, Darren Ruff has 10, Alex Dickerson has 10, Longoria has 9, Austin Slater has 9, Steven Duggar has 7. Like, you just keep going on, and they have so many guys just
Have they
hitting lots
played
of home
all
runs.
18 of their games in Arizona already or something?
I don't think so. Like, this is they're a good team, and the strength of them is finding these kind of guys. They cycle through them and they find the guys. So Yastrzemski was traded from the Orioles in a minor league deal. He was basically a throwaway prospect, and the Giants have turned him into a legit guy.
Well, and
Same kind of thing with Lamont.
He wasn't even a rookie until he was 30 or 31.
I think he was 29 or 30, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they find these guys that are kind of near 30 almost, like an Alex Dickerson, like a Steven Duggar. These guys are just helping this team so much, and we haven't even gotten to the rebuilding point of it. So these guys are not really necessarily going to be part of the future of the Giants, but they could be. Like a Yastrzemski, he's stuck around enough and he's done enough that you can kind of see him having a future on the team for, 3-4 years down the road.
Yeah, Yaz is definitely having a come back to earth year so far, if I'm remembering correctly, for the most part. He's hitting 229, his 321 OBP, 481 slugging, 116 WRC plus. So he's still productive. He's just not as good as he was in 19 and 20. But yeah, no, he's definitely a guy that they're going to want to keep around because he's only 30. So he's got a couple more good years of still prime-ish years, and then some good veteran years there. And with the young guys that we're about to talk about coming up, that is definitely a guy you want to have in your clubhouse. So. Yeah,
for sure. And what do we have to look forward to with the Giants, though? Because they've got some good prospects in their system as well.
The Giants have a couple of really, really good prospects. So their number one overall prospect is Marco Luciano. He's a shortstop. I think he was a 2020 draft pick.
He was a 2018 international free agent, and he signed for almost $3 million. So he was a kind of a big name back then. And he's in
2018, he signed at 16 years old.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
How old is he now?
19.
Is he just 19? Okay, yeah. And he's playing at San Jose A-ball, and he leads the league in home runs as a 19-year-old. So that's pretty sweet. So this guy's got some superstar potential. Another prospect is Joey Bart. So we got to have a conversation about Joey Bart.
I think he's getting traded.
I think it's going to be interesting. So guy kind of has nothing to prove at AAA at this point. He just needs an opportunity to actually play at the major league level. The only problem is the guy in front of him just happens to be an MVP candidate again. His name is Buster Posey.
Yeah, which I would like to point out kind of came out of nowhere.
It really did, considering the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That he's played.
Posey has been struggling the last couple years. He's been playing a lot less games at catcher, more games at first. So it seemed like one of those where you might try and maybe move Brandon Belt either positionally or trade him to a different organization or lose him in free agency or something. Move Buster to first base and then bring Bart up as a catcher. Well, that's not happening right now. And it's not looking like it's going to happen anytime soon now. So
it really doesn't, no.
What do you do with him? He's 24 years old. He's proved everything he can prove in the minor leagues. He just needs a major league roster spot. That's all he needs.
Yeah. And I just thought of this on the spot here. So you could be onto something with like maybe an off-season trade. I don't really see him getting traded this week, but the Giants also drafted a catcher, Patrick Bailey, in the first round in 2020. So
and Patrick Bailey is also a really good prospect. He's their number 6 prospect.
Correct. So maybe Buster comes back. They sign him to an extension or something, and they kind of push that down the line and just say, Bart, you got to go. Or maybe the DH comes next year and they can kind of split the duties there.
Yeah, that could be. But yeah, I definitely would hate for Joey Bart to fall into this, but it's looking like it's going to fall into this, where he ends up being kind of what Carson Kelly was, where he's just kind of stuck behind Yachty for a couple of years before they finally realize that he's not. He needs to be playing now. He can't wait. We have other guys that are younger that are going to come up. Patrick Bailey, who would be essentially their Andrew Kisner. So they either need to use Bart or move on from Bart. And I think we're really close to them making that decision. I mean, hell, Joey Bart's, where's he at in the top 100? He's like top 20 prospect still, isn't he? Yeah, he's the 17th over. He's the number 17 overall prospect by MLB. So, the MLB pipeline rankings. So, really good prospect. But
yep. And I just wanted to point out about Buster himself. So he's got a $22 million option for next year. If you had told me like earlier this year or before this year that would have a chance of getting picked up, I would say absolutely not. There's no possible way that's going to happen. But I feel like it's an actual question now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, like, he's what, 34?
Yeah.
So he's getting a little bit up there. But he's still a very productive hitter. He's finally healthy, which I think is the big thing with him, is that he's just finally, with the shortened season, the longer off season, he had time to get right. And with him getting right, I think that's going to help his longevity a lot. We've seen other catchers that have gotten way up there in years and stayed catchers and still been really productive. Pudge Rodriguez, trying to think of guys that aren't Yachty just because I don't want to bring everything back to the Cardinals. But I mean, at the same time, also Yachty. He's 39 now. He's only getting like 10 mil a year now. But what was he making 5 years ago? He was making like 25 mil. And the salaries are rising at this point. So 22 for a 34-year-old Buster, I'm good with that.
And especially a 32 Buster that's playing the way he is playing right now, which is just at a crazy level. Like he's been the best catcher in the league, basically, other than maybe Real Muto. But
in the National League or in major leagues, because Sal's been pretty good too.
Yeah, Sal too. Yeah.
So I guess with this rebuild though, they've got prospects, but prospects aren't going to be here immediately. So are we looking at a really long rebuild, or what do the Giants have to play with in the next couple of years to keep them competitive? Because they're in first place now. So they don't want to go from first place back to last place and then come back to first place. When you're here, you want to stay here. What can they do? What helps them out in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so this has kind of been a drawn-out rebuild, and I think we're reaching the end of it, and that's kind of what the Giants have done. They've kind of accelerated that timetable to be really competitive this year. There's no chance they're going to miss the playoffs at this point. But kind of like the Mariners, I don't know if they necessarily thought they were going to be in this position. But with that being said, there's no reason for them to not be competitive in the following years because of the situation that Farhan Zaidi has put them in. And he has honestly done an incredible job, especially looking at their salary commitments for 2022 and beyond that. So after this season, the only guaranteed salaries that they have are Evan Longoria at $19.7 million, Tommy La Stella $5.25 million, and $2.5 million for Jake McGee. Everyone else is in arbitration or pre-arbitration, and the big Crawford contract, potentially the Posey contract, and Brandon Belt, all those guys are on expiring deals.
Yeah,
at this point.
Granted, we did already mention Buster does have that $22 million option. So really, we're looking at 42. We're looking at $50 million on the payroll for the San Francisco Giants for next year if they pick up the Buster option.
Yeah, they can go out and get any free agent they want next year, maybe two. They can just go after the best possible players
Dude,
that are available, and it's a stacked class.
hell, dude, they could just pick up Trout's contract and send some prospects over. Pick up the
Totally.
entire
I'm
contract.
sure the Angels would love that. Yeah. No, but they should be major players in the shortstop sweepstakes. So I could see them going after Corey Seager or Carlos Correa. And then really we haven't even talked about pitching at all, but it'd be nice for them to have some guys to back up. Well, they have a bunch of guys on 1-year deals, so they gotta fill out the pitching staff.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest question mark going into next year, because I have no doubt in my mind that they'll figure out how to put a roster together that can hit the ball. With a bunch of guys expiring at the same time, trying to get some of the better free agent pitchers and just putting in an entire pitching staff, like a cohesive pitching staff together, all in one offseason, might be a little bit of a challenge. So it's always nice whenever they expire one each year. But obviously that can't happen when they're all on 1-year deals. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So are you ready to move on to the next team?
I am. Can I start the next one with kind of a story about something that I did this week?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so our next team is the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates have not made the postseason since 2015, and so they've been kind of in a rebuild mode ever since. Their last GM did a horrible job. I feel like I could judge that now. He did a pretty bad job at bolstering that farm system.
Made some very poor trades, including one very, very bad trade.
The Garrett Cole
that
trade?
I feel like set them.
Or the Tyler Glasnow
Not
trade?
the Tyler Glasnow trade, where they traded Glasnow, Austin Meadows, and
Shane
the player
Baz.
to be named later, who happened to be Shane Baz, who's now a top 10 prospect in baseball.
And about to come up to the majors.
And they got almost nothing from Chris Archer in the time that he was with the team. So go ahead.
So since then, the Pirates have hired a new GM and manager, and Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton, respectively. And Ben Cherington is doing some work, trying to get his rebuild going. He's now in year 2. And I went to an Indianapolis Indians game last Wednesday. That is the Pirates AAA team. And I looked at the roster, and as a baseball fan, I was ecstatic. As a Pirates fan, I would have been furious. The roster was a who's who of over-the-hill, okay at best big leaguers in their prime. So you had guys like Anthony Alford, who really isn't that old, but he's never really been great. D. Strange Gordon, Christian Bethancourt, Taylor Davis, Andrew Susac, Stephen Wright, Stephen Brault, and Shelby Miller were the best guys on that team. I don't think having any of those guys in your AAA is really a good sign, period. They do have a couple of guys who were really well-regarded prospects that are not panned out so far in the majors, that are back down, and Mitch Keller, James Marvel, Cole Tucker, Dustin Fowler's back down there, but he's on the IL. So they have a couple of guys that are like, yeah, that makes sense for a AAA team. But then they have a whole bunch of like 34 to 36-year-old former major leaguers who were good in their prime and can't hold down a job in the majors now because all these young kids are coming up and they're just amazing, and so they're taking the jobs. So that's what the Pirates farm system looks like from the outside, because nobody looks at their lower minor league levels, because there's so much time between someone coming in at low A and making it to the majors that they may not pan out. So coming into the season, the Pirates had the 16th ranked farm system by Keith Law from The Athletic. So that's kind of my story. The Indianapolis Indians got pummeled, I might add, by the Toledo Mud Hens, who is the Detroit Tigers AAA team. We'll get to them in a minute.
Yes, we will.
But
So yeah, definitely, I feel you on the AAA roster being really barren of real talent at this point, but it kind of makes sense considering the state of this club, and there's no way that they're going to be competitive anytime in the next 3 years minimum. We're probably looking more like 4 or 5 years. So it kind of makes sense that their prospects timelines are kind of going to follow that. So they just drafted Henry Davis, number one pick in the draft. Um, I don't see him making the major leagues until 2024. So by that time, they need to be competitive.
really, a college junior catcher, and you think it's going to be 2024?
I think so.
I would expect 23 at the latest. But granted,
I
I
mean,
guess they're trying to extend his timeline. But yeah,
but just look at like Adley Rutschman, same kind of situation, where he's a college catcher. He was drafted in 19. I
2019.
don't believe he's going to make it to the majors this year. So looking at 2022 for him. So
Yeah, I
same
think
kind of timeline.
with Rutschman, you'd have to count the COVID year. So I kind of feel like with Henry Davis, it's a little bit different. Or I guess was there a COVID year in NCAA?
Yeah, there was.
Oh well, then maybe it's the same. But
yeah, but yeah, Rutschman also was a can't miss prospect. Davis is a good one, but he's not quite at Rutschman's level, so that's another thing. But yeah, so at the lower levels of the minors, though, they've got some pretty good prospects, I'd say.
Yeah, they do. They've got Quinn Priester is at high A right now. He's a right-handed pitcher. He is a really high. I think he was a. He
was a first-round pick in 19. Okay. High school pitcher.
Yeah, so he'll be a little ways out. He plays for the Greensboro Grasshoppers right now.
Nice.
Yeah. And then they're Nick. Oh, sorry, I missed Nick Gonzalez. Nick Gonzalez is also at high A. He's a second base prospect. He is the first round pick in 2020. And there's a lot of hope for him. He was drafted out of college. He's 22 years old. Drafted out of New Mexico State. And then O'Neal Cruz is their other top 100 prospect. So all these guys that we've named so far are top 100 prospects. So they do have some really good talent coming up in a while. O'Neal Cruz is at Double A, so he's actually the closest. He's a shortstop prospect. Could be positioned there right next to Cabrian Hayes. Make that left side of the infield really good.
Have you seen O'Neal Cruz? He's a giant. He's about 6'7". I don't know if he's gonna last as a shortstop, but
6'7",
I can see him moving to the outfield.
He's got a 50 grade fielding tool, a future 50.
But
so
you don't see too many 6'7" shortstops out there, but that'd be fun.
It would. But yeah, so those are the good guys, and then it starts to fall off a little bit from there. They just completed a trade. So yesterday's trade. Saturday?
Yeah.
Yesterday. Yesterday's trade. I guess I'll let you mention the trade.
So they traded their all-star second baseman, Adam Frazier, to the Padres, who now can put out a fully all-star infield with Jake Cronenworth, Frazier, Machado, and Tatis. And the return was Tucupita Marcano, who is the headliner in this deal. Also, where's my
Jack Sawinski and Mitchell Miliano.
Yeah, so a relief pitcher prospect and an outfielder, kind of in the lower levels. But Marcano is kind of interesting because he's got some positional versatility, and he kind of the hope for him is that he would kind of turn into like an Adam Frazier type player, a guy that can get on base a ton and play around the field. So I kind of like this trade for the Pirates, and one other thing that is a good sign for me is that the Pirates actually paid down some of this deal for Frazier, because the owner of the Pirates, Bob Nutting, he's kind of got a reputation as being a sort of a stingy owner, and it's good that he's giving Charrington the ability to pay a little bit just so they can improve the prospect return. So that's going to help them in improving their system. And since they have so many low-level minors prospects, I think if they have good seasons, they're going to start getting some of that name recognition and become one of the best farm systems around the league.
Yeah, and so Tukapita actually came in as the number 8 prospect in the organization, and he's a relatively well-regarded prospect.
He was the Padres' number 6 prospect, so
yeah, and he comes in at the Pirates at number 8. So that I guess means that I am underselling the Pirates organization here, because they're 4, 5, and 6 prospects, not 4, 5, 6, and 7 prospects. I honestly have no idea who in the world they are. But they're all at
and that's
A
just
and
a function of them being so young. Yeah, so you'll know about them probably a year from now.
They do have some guys that'll be coming up in the meantime to help bolster this team a little bit, to hold them over until they can be competitive. And those guys are like Travis Swaggerty, Miguel Yahure, Jared Oliva, some guys like that. So there are guys coming up, but the guys that you're really looking forward to are a little ways down the line.
Yeah. So I think the Pirates are kind of on the right track. And one other thing that we'll mention about the rebuilding process is it's just a chance. You got to try as many people out as you can and see what sticks. So they've made 5 waiver claims this year, and they've traded for 6 different DFA players, like Dustin Fowler, Dwayne Underwood, and now John Nagowski from the Cardinals, who's actually been tearing it up.
And I actually would have guessed he would have torn it up. If you would have asked me before he played his first game, John Nagowski has like an 80 grade hit tool. Dude is amazing at contact. He got like 4 plate appearances, I think, in his entire major league tenure with the Cardinals, but he raked at AAA forever. So I'm really really happy for John Nagowski going over and taking that first base role and just absolutely killing it. And then the Pirates do have a silver lining for the next couple years while they're waiting for everyone else. Ke'Bryan Hayes is here. He's here to stay, and he's here to stay for a very long time.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully
he doesn't go the way of the other star Pirates that have been traded in the last half decade or so.
Do you count Josh Bell as one of those, or?
Nah, I don't really count
just
him.
McCutchen, Starling Marte, those guys.
Garrett Cole and Meadows and Glasnow. Yeah. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but I think they're on their way, but it's going to take a very long time. So you got to be really patient if you're a Pirates fan.
Yeah. But hopeful. Remember that when you're in the cellar of the division, cuz that's how the big rebuilds work. I think you're probably the best person to ask there. But
yeah, that's a good point, because so when you think of a rebuild, at least for me, I think of 2 teams, the Cubs and the Astros, in recent memory. So those are the teams that went the full-blown, just we don't care what we put on the field in the initial years of the rebuild. We're just trying to trade the guys we have for whatever prospects we can get and just have the best farm system we possibly can, and then start spending money kind of like midway through the rebuild towards the end, where you can kind of immediately become a contender. So it took the Cubs 5 years to rebuild, and I think it took the Astros about the same amount of time. So I'll ask you, do you think this strategy of rebuilding is one that can work in 2021? Because I personally don't think that's necessarily the way to go anymore, because so many teams have tried it. It makes the strategy so much less successful.
So I think it could be. I think it can be successful. I think the question is which franchise is doing it, not from who's running it, more from is the fan base going to revolt? Are they going to leave you? Are you going to lose a bunch of money on that side? Because you have to have money to be able to do this rebuild. It's not. It's like, yes, you're saving money by putting a terrible team on the field, but you're losing money because you're not drawing as many fans. And so a smaller market team is probably the only teams that can do it. It sounds counterintuitive because you would think a big market team is going to have more fans showing up to the stadium, but the smaller market teams don't have as high of expectations. The Yankees could never do this. The Red Sox almost had to, but they can't ever do this. I don't
But
think
at the same time,
I don't think the Cubs could
I
ever
would
do
never
it either.
advocate. I would never advocate for the strategy though. Like it's not.
I wouldn't either. It's
It's
bad for
not
baseball in general.
enjoyable for fans.
It's
Yeah.
bad for baseball in general. I think it well, and the other thing that it does is you have all your prospects that you're kind of hoarding, and then you bring them up, and then you lose your core four all in 2 years. That's exactly what the Cubs are going through. Granted, Rizzo wasn't a prospect; he was signed on a contract, or traded for, and then signed on a contract. But with Rizzo, Baez, Chris Bryant, all being free agents at the end of this year, and then at the end of next year, you have Wilson Contreras. That's all because they went through this type of rebuild. If they would have done kind of what the Cardinals do, which is not something a lot of teams can do and do well, and I would argue right now the Cardinals are not really doing it well, but, is sitting there and keeping a competitive roster on the field where you're always going to hit 500, and then every couple years when you get this uber prospect, you then come up and you start spending money and you put a really good team on the field. That would be the 2015 Cardinals, the 2013 Cardinals. But not many teams can do that, but that's the way it should be done, I would argue. It's just not something a lot of teams can stomach and pay the money for to have a okay-ish product. Because not every fan base is the St. Louis Cardinals fan base or the Yankees fan base, where they're always there no matter what happens. So
Yeah. It's interesting the way teams rebuild, and I would argue that the Cubs and the Astros were successful rebuilds. I just think that there's so many examples of ones that don't actually work out.
oh yeah, absolutely. I think
And it feels so much worse when it's been 5 years and then keeps going on and on. So the team that I'm thinking of is the Phillies. They've been rebuilding sort of forever, and they've kind of been trying to contend forever, but it never really worked out.
yeah, and I think that's part of, or that's really a product of who they've had making the decisions. I'm not saying they're bad at their jobs because they've got really good players, but for some reason, the good players that go there all of a sudden are either not quite as good, or they're putting all their eggs in one basket, and then something else is a major Achilles heel, which is kind of what it's been, where they can hit the ball, but their bullpen is god awful and loses them every game.
Yeah.
They can have whatever lead they want, but they will blow it every time. That's kind of what's been going on with the Phillies. I think it's almost a little bit of a different situation entirely. But
All right. So moving on to our last team for the day, the Detroit Tigers. And they are a really fun team to watch actually this year.
which
And
is really
they're
weird
kind
to
of-
say.
It is really weird to say because they haven't made the playoffs since 2014. They've been pretty bad, and Miggy's not even good anymore. So, like, if you're a Tigers fan, what are you excited about?
Yeah.
But there are many, many things to be excited about now. And the first is their trio of amazing pitchers.
Well, I guess before you get into what to be excited about, just a little bit of background about the rebuild for everybody. So the Tigers last made the playoffs in 2014. Before the 2015 season, they hired Al Avila as their GM. He started kind of their big rebuild process. That's when the Indians got really good and won every single year. And then in 2020, well, I guess this year, AJ Hinch came back from his 1 year suspension for the Astros cheating scandal. And Al Avila, he pounced. He got AJ Hinch for this young team, and I think that that's part of why what you're about to say next is what it is. So now, what to look forward to?
Yeah, so the guys that people have been looking forward to for a long time, or a few years at least now, are their starting pitchers. So their three-headed monster here, Casey Mize, Tarek Skubal, and Matt Manning. They're all in the major leagues now, and they're all having some level of success. Skubal and Mize seem like they've really kind of taken off, and they improved a ton from last year, which is, I guess, to be expected, but it's good that they're actually doing it and we can see the results. They're kind of being restricted on their innings a little bit here, but overall, I would say they've been successful seasons. And then Manning, he's only made about 5 starts now, and the last couple have been pretty good. So these are the guys that are going to be pitching 3 out of 5 days for a very long time for the Tigers.
Yeah, and Matt Manning is the 18th, number 18 overall prospect on MLB Pipeline, so he's really well regarded. He does still have his prospect status at 5 games, but there's seeing the progress Mize and Tarek Skubal have had this year. If Matt Manning, even if he starts to struggle a little bit, he's every bit as good as those two. So I would expect him in the year to come to keep developing at the major league level and turn that corner. So,
and the fact that we've seen the development with those first 2 guys gives me confidence that they can do it with Manning as well.
Exactly. So if he struggles this year, don't be concerned. Give him a little bit, because Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal both struggled last year. But I mean, that Tigers team struggled last year.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. So this guy, I love talking about him. I think we've talked about it on this show. I wanted to talk about him more
3 times, I think.
I wanted to talk about him more on when we were talking about like rookie hitters, but this guy is a Rule 5 pick, and he's been the best player on the Tigers.
Rule 5 out of the Twins, right?
Rule 5 from the Twins, yeah. Yep. How often is a Rule 5 pick not the worst player on the roster? Almost never.
5% of the time?
And he's not just like an okay player. He's been the best player on the team. And the way he's done it, I should probably say his name. It's Akil Baddoo. He was he had an injury in 2019, so he missed most of that season. Then, of course, he got selected in this year's Rule 5 draft. And he initially starts off super hot. I think he hit a grand slam in his first game, just going off like crazy. And then he really cooled down and struggled quite a bit towards the end of April and May. And then in June and July, he really just completely corrected and has taken off again. And he's a really unique combination of power and speed. He's got, I don't have that up right now, but he's got double-digit stolen bases so far this season and near 10 home runs. It's amazing that they've been able to take
9 home runs and 14 stolen bases.
Yeah. So this guy looks like he's only 22 years old, and he looks like he could be a member of this team for a while and kind of one of the core hitters, which we're going to get to now.
Yeah.
In their minor league system. So they've got 3 really big hitting prospects that are going to join Baddoo here in the major leagues probably next season. And that's Spencer Torkelson, first round pick in 2020.
I believe he's now the number 2 prospect in baseball, now that Wander is up.
So this guy absolutely mashes. He was the best hitting prospect in college the year he came out, and he's kind of had some bad luck in AA, but overall he's been pretty good. Not sure if he's truly a third baseman, but worst case he'll just be a first baseman.
Spot.
Yeah.
So,
but he's gonna hit enough to make it fine that he's just a first baseman.
Yeah. And then
Next guy is Riley Green.
Yep.
So he's an outfielder. He's got huge power, huge athleticism. He's also a top 10 prospect, just like Torque. So
he's
top 10 prospects.
He's the number 15.
Okay, but I've seen him as a top 10 in some other places. But
yeah.
It's pretty rare when one team has two guys that are in the top 15. So those are kind of what Tigers fans have to look forward to, and they've been a fun team without those guys to this point in the season.
Yeah, and there's two more guys who I think one of them is the third hitting prospect you were about to mention, but two more guys that are in their low minors right now. They were the 2020 first and second round draft picks that are potential future top 100 guys, and that's Dylan Dingler and Daniel Cabrera. Both guys were... I think Dylan Dingler was he a college hitter or a high school hitter?
Yeah, he was a college hitter. He was drafted in the second round last year, but he has like a first round talent. Basically, teams were kind of worried about him and his durability as a catcher, so that's kind of why he fell to the first round. So they basically got a first round talent in the second round last year.
Well, that was Daniel Cabrera.
Well, this is Dingler too.
They were both second rounders that were supposed to be first round? That's nuts.
Yeah, they had a great draft last year.
That's absolutely insane. Huh. Yeah, 38th pick in the second round he was the 38th overall pick. Dylan Dingler was. So he was the first pick of the second round. And then, because Torque was the first round pick. Duh. I'm an idiot. And then Daniel Cabrera, I believe, was a competitive balance pick after the second round. So he went like 62nd overall. Yeah, and both those guys were first round talents that fell to the second round, and the Tigers managed to get both. So
yeah,
it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah, so you kind of can see that core coming together here with Dingler, Green, Torkelson, and Akil Baddoo, I guess, if he can keep it up.
So I guess that brings up the question, if we've got these three guys who are supposed to be like godsend hitters in the minors, how good are the Tigers even at developing their players, though?
Yeah. So they've had a couple decent stories this year with their catchers, actually. So maybe Dingler could follow suit. So Jake Rogers and Eric Haas, they're both kind of older catchers, kind of getting close to 30. They've been in other organizations and never really done much. They've mostly been backups, and Haas has 15 home runs this year. So he's kind of found something with the Tigers, and maybe he's going to hold them over until Dingler comes up in a couple years.
All right. So that's what we have to look forward to. I guess if the Tigers are an up-and-up team, and I mean they showed that coming right out of the All-Star break. They 7-game win streak to start the second half. Granted, it was against the Twins and the Rangers, but they were beating the bad teams, which is always what you want to do. If you can beat the bad teams, then you're in a decent spot if you're rebuilding. Then you need to get over that hump and start beating some good teams, and then you could consider it maybe a success. But
yeah, this team gives me kind of 2014 Cubs vibes, because that was still when they were rebuilding, and they had a really good second half of that season, and then they were a contender in 2015. So
well, and it's kind of what the Mariners are doing now. The Mariners are pummeling bad teams. They're like 26-8 against teams under 500 or something, and then they're like 16-30 against teams over 500. So they're beating the really bad teams. They're struggling against the good teams, but they're really, really young, and not all their prospects are up, and they haven't made moves to try and be able to beat those good teams yet. So it's always a great sign, and I think the Tigers are right there. I think both of those two teams, the Mariners, who I think we should talk about on another episode because they deserve a lot of love. But I think the Mariners and the Tigers are both going to be these teams that here in about a year, maybe 2 years, are going to start being pretty darn good and are going to be good for a while. I think their systems are both really good. So, yeah.
Yes, they are. And a few other guys I'll mention here. So Derek Hill, first round pick of the Tigers in 2014, and he's played 15 games in 2020. He's played 15 games this year. Super speedy center fielder type guy. Really good athleticism, and he's just battled a lot of injuries in his career, but he's a really exciting player to watch. And I think he's going to get, a runway here in the second half of the season to see if he can be the center fielder of the future. And they're going to trade some guys now this week in Robbie Grossman and Jonathan Scope. They don't really fit on the squad. And that'll open up some playing time for Isak Paredes and Zach Short, a couple of infielders, and I am really excited to watch the Tigers this year.
Isak Paredes.
Who's that? Nice.
Oh,
there you go.
Just thought I'd show that off right quick. Yeah, no, I'm really excited about the Tigers. Matthew's going to be ticked whenever I say this, so hopefully he's not listening live. I'm really excited for the Tigers to be good and to win this division every single year for 5 years in a row. I just think it'd be awesome.
Well, they're going to have... Yeah, I mean the White Sox need some competition, right?
Yeah, the White Sox are going to be their competition, which saying that the Tigers and the White Sox are going to be the best two in a division for a couple of years in a row seems a little crazy. Granted, there was the really Sox... long Tigers run, but we were a long ways past that with Scherzer and Verlander and those guys.
Good Miggy. Those are the days.
Good Miggy. V-Mart. All those guys. Yeah, we're way past that. But yeah, so the Tigers will be interesting. They will be moving some pieces. So they're definitely mailing it in for this year. But there's a lot of hope for this year. And the next week is going to be fun to watch. I am going to mention that right now. I think they're finishing out the month of July with the Twins and the Orioles. So still bad teams. So watch as much of the Tigers prior to the 31st. I think they're still playing the Orioles on the 1st. So watch as many Tigers games until the 1st and then stop. Because
I'll be watching after. I want to see all these kids play.
Well, that's a good point. But if you only want to watch the Tigers win, probably stop in August.
I feel like they can keep it going.
They start.
Most of their players are young, right? They're getting all their contributions from young players.
Yeah, they are. They are. But the schedule just starts getting. August is better than September. I will point that out. So, Red Sox, Indians, Orioles, Indians, Angels, Blue Jays, Cardinals, Blue Jays, one game against the Twins, and then to start September they get the A's, the Reds, the Pirates. Then the Rays, the Brewers, the Rays, the Sox, the Royals, and the Twins to finish it. So the bad teams get fewer and farther between, and the teams winning their divisions get closer and more often. But yeah, so it'll be fun to watch. I'm curious, what are they doing with Matt Boyd? Are they keeping him?
Well, yeah, he's still injured, so I think it's going to be difficult for him to get traded. So they've got him for another year or two. So
yeah, so trade him in the offseason if he comes back this year, or keep him.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Yep. So I guess we'll summarize by saying if you're a Giants fan, you're probably really happy. If you're a Pirates fan, you've got a tiny bit of hope, but for the most part, you don't feel great about it because you know how long the road is going to be.
Here's my recommendation for Pirates fans. find a secondary team that's a little bit closer, that's still not great to root for in the meantime. Go AL so that you don't have to feel bad. Be a
Perhaps the
Tigers fan. Be a
Yeah.
Mariners fan. That's what I suggest for Pirates fans right now.
Yeah, and the Tigers, we just talked about them. They're on the up and up, and they're going to be quite good pretty soon.
Yeah, I am so excited to watch that three-headed monster rotation. I mean, hell, it's literally going to be back to Verlander, Scherzer, and Jordan Zimmerman back in the heyday.
Yeah,
It's
Yep.
going to be that same feel. I don't know if we're going to have two Hall of Famers in that rotation, but maybe.
who knows?
So,
Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else you can find podcasts. And we will be back at you next week.
yeah, so go ahead and follow us on Facebook and Twitter to get notifications or updates on if we're going to change the schedule or do an extra stream, open baseball card videos or anything. If you go follow us on YouTube, you can find us opening cards over there. I did just post a new card opening video today of 2021 Topps Gypsy Queen, and we got some pretty decent hits. I wouldn't say it's the best box I've ever seen, but we did get an out of 10. So go check that out. And yeah, so like, subscribe, comment on everything. It helps us out. So if you like us, let us know. But yeah, have a great night.